What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. Insomnia Mailbag Thursday night. Just got a lot of questions that compiled. Jets added a new receiver. A little 10 or 15 minutes here. Why not? To drop in between draft season and Buck the Trend. Going to rip through these quickly. From Davey Knuckles. At this point, does any meaningful signing, Keenan Allen, Julian Blackmon, come after the comp pick period? I'm not going to count Reynolds, who was signed today, as like a quote-unquote meaningful pick, although he might be the second best receiver on their roster as of today. I do think after the draft, you could see some moves. I think they want to see how the board breaks, who they add, who they don't add, who they miss out on. Was there any veteran trades they made throughout the weekend because guys become available? And then, can you sign someone in very late April, May, or June before everything ramps up over the summer? So, if for whatever reason the board breaks a certain way and they feel particularly thin at receiver, sure, maybe they go add a veteran at that point. I wouldn't say they're done adding veterans is my short answer, though, even if it doesn't happen before the NFL draft. All right. Next one from UT Farm 2012. Would you resign AVT, JJ, and Brees now? Will the Jets? I don't think the Jets are going to move on signing any of those guys at the moment. My guess is if they are contemplating a long-term contract for anyone right now, it's with Garrett or Sauce. Due to their positions, due to their age, due to their productivity, and lack of injury history to date, those are going to be where the focus is right now. I think because of the position Brees plays, because of Braylon Allen being on the roster, and no one likes Brees more than me. I think they're going to let him play out his contract, put a franchise tag on him, and take it a year at a time from there. AVT, my guess is, they need to internally decide, is he going to stay at guard or tackle? I would get ahead of paying him. I just don't see it happening imminently. Maybe if he's a guy, if he starts the season strong, I could see maybe it's like a mid-season one that they try to get done. JJ, my guess is they're going to wait until after this year. They're going to want to see how he looks in this defensive system. They're going to want to see how he looks coming off his injury. And I get that. I wouldn't be in a rush really right now to give JJ or Brees massive contracts. I'd let this year play out. AVT, I could see, before the whole season finishes, if he's looking really good with what you're doing, do you get ahead of paying him and Simpson maybe to keep that interior offensive line together? That's probably the nearest term one beyond Garrett or Sauce, which hopefully get done sooner rather than later. Okay. Scroll a little further here from Hudson Jet. Does the signing of Josh Reynolds means we could address offensive line, tight end, defensive line, and safety in rounds 1 through 4, and then take a dart throw at take the top off a defense type receiver like Dante Thornton in the later rounds? I don't think the addition of Josh Reynolds is going to impact the Jets draft plans in any meaningful way. I look at him as probably a Lazard roster replacement and someone with a little more experience at this level and productivity than Tyler Johnson. So he's, in a perfect world, like Josh Reynolds is like wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. And he's been a pretty productive player, actually. Like he's not that far removed from having 600 yards and 5 touchdowns with Engstrand as his passing game coordinator, and had a nice 3-year stretch from I think it was 21 to 23. Didn't do much last year, but has had success playing in this offense. But he's not someone you're going to adjust your plans over. He's much more of like a 1-year stopgap player who is more likely to go get you 40 catches for 400 yards than probably Tyler Johnson is, and probably gives you a clearer path towards moving Lazard off the roster. So if they still like your receiver in round 2, like a Higgins or a Beck, I don't think Reynolds is going to stop them from doing that in any way whatsoever. JP Waxer, do your mushrooms keep you up at night, or do you offset with some chamomile tea after the kids go to bed? I'm assuming my mushrooms, you're referring to Magic Mind. It does not keep me up at night. This is my time to podcast. And once I get one done, I like to just rip out a couple at once. And there's some other things we're recording for the draft. So, the ring light's on. I'm in front of the mic. I might as well keep talking and answering questions. I'm more of I go to bed inordinately late. It's a bad habit that I'll have to break when my daughter is born in a few months. Well, actually, I won't have to break it because I won't be sleeping at all. But I go to bed at like midnight and get up at like 6 every day. I'm just about a 6 hour a night guy, and for better or worse, that's the routine I've gotten into. Just part of the podcasting life, let's call it. Um, okay, from Eddie John. Do you see a scenario where the Jets try to fill their starting tight end and their second and third pass catching roles by taking two tight ends in the top 4 rounds, similar to what New England did back in 2010? Long callback. I like that. If the Jets were to go this route, what two tight ends would fit? I would be really surprised if the Jets drafted two tight ends in the top 4 rounds. I could see a scenario where they take Warren in round 1, and then like take a late round guy like a Hawes, who I know we're a fan of here, just for the contrast of skills a little bit. And like, it's a different thing if you're going round 1 and round 5, I think, or round 6. Even then, I'd be a bit surprised if they're going to draft two tight ends. My guess is they're going to draft. Warren is still like a logical mock pick. If it's not him, maybe, it's a guy in round 2 or round 3 that kind of rounds out what they have already. It's going to depend how the board breaks. If you can get a guy like Loveland with one of your later picks, I don't know though. I just think seeing them drafting two tight ends that early would surprise me, is my thought. Unless the board breaks in a very funky way, I think they're going to draft a tight end and a receiver before round 4. But, I could very well just see a room of Warren, Stone Smart, and Ruckert, and then they try to work on filling out the receiver room. I'd be surprised if they were that proactive with tight end, even though it's a good class. So, because of the depth of the class, maybe it's not the most shocking thing in the world. But if they're going to end up with two tight ends, it feels like round 1 and round 6, like their first pick and their last pick. And the last pick is obviously that much more of a dart throw overall. From Patrick, Josh Reynolds shows again the interest in blocking at the wide receiver position. Which guys in this receiver group outside of the top 3 rounds might be likely fits? I'll have CR and I talk about this a little more in War Room. I would not react to the Reynolds signing too much. I just think he's a guy who's played in the system. He's a productive veteran, comes as cheap as you could get, familiar with the offensive coordinator, more proven than Corley, Gibson, Tyler Johnson. I do think it's a valuable thing that he's a willing blocker. I suppose you can make the case that opens a path to Lazard staying on the roster in some ways, but I just don't see it. I actually think the only thing I think we learned from the Reynolds signing is that they don't expect Lazard to be here. They're waiting to see if Rodgers is going to go to the Steelers, and if he does, they're going to try to pawn him off on Pittsburgh. And if Rodgers retires, then maybe he gets cut after the draft. I don't see him a part of this thing anymore, and it makes it easier to do that because Reynolds is a pretty comparable profile to him and is more familiar in the system and isn't going to come with all the previous Rodgers era baggage overall. Last one, also from Davey Knuckles, who we started with. I'm kind of stuck on why Warren wasn't able to produce earlier. Again, he was behind other NFL players, and the OC change obviously helped him break out. But drafting the 6th tight end in the top 10 this century, I'd like more than 1 year of production, if that 1 year is his 5th. I want to say that some of the concerns about the Warren pick are very valid. I'm not going to sit here and say the fact that he's an older prospect and sort of has this one big year of productivity are not potential red flags. I think it was a bit of a unique evolving situation at Penn State. I think when you look at what this class is and who is likely to be available, he is reasonable value at 7. And I think you can project out how Penn State used him last year and some of the concepts I think the Jets are likely to run on offense this year and see a fit for a guy that brings a very high floor and can just play all 3 downs and help you as a blocker and help you as a primary pass catcher beyond Garrett Wilson. And it's not without risk, but I feel that when he had the opportunity to be featured more appropriately with a productive college quarterback, the game got more well-rounded to a guy that you can see catching 55, 60 passes, 5-6 touchdowns in a season, and being a really strong complement to Garrett Wilson while also supporting a question mark at right tackle and helping you in the run game. And just being someone that you can say he can play every snap. We don't have to hide him. He's not really just a big slot playing tight end. And when I look what's likely to be available there, these other guys don't not are come with risk too. You know, Membu could be another version of Ekwano for all we know. He's not as good of a prospect as Fashanu or some of the other top tackles that were taken recently. Could be good, but he's not like without just because he's an offensive lineman doesn't mean there's not a risk to taking him. Mason Graham, I feel like there's less risk. I just don't think he's going to be there. If he is there, I could very well see the Jets taking him, and I think that has less risk attached to it. I'd be surprised if they took Tet. Maybe that's wrong, but I just feel like the chatter on Tet has kind of put him down as more of a guy who goes around 15 versus going at 7. So I'd be surprised. Do they look to trade down? Maybe. But I just think the value for this class, and it's not that overall this is not like the strongest draft class ever, and it doesn't mean that you reach on a guy. But Warren, if he doesn't go at 7, I don't think he's like tumbling down the board. I think he's taken within a couple picks after that. And Bowers fell further than I thought he would last year and was awesome as a rookie and a different player than Warren, just a totally different style. But I think Warren's going to be really good right away. And I worry about the paralysis by analysis sometimes when you look at who will be available and you say, man, like we need a pass catcher and we need blocking support and we need a tight end. And there's a tight end who could do both things well right away. Maybe just plug and play and you go from there. And is he ever going to be the best tight end in the NFL? No. But could he be one of the 5 or 6 best tight ends in the NFL pretty consistently and immediately make an impact and make Fields' life easier and then make your rookie quarterback's life easier in a couple of years? Yeah, I think so. Warren's been the most popular mock pick recently. Graham has kind of been mine previously. I just don't think he's going to be there. But Warren, Graham, Membu, it's going to be hard to complain too much about any of those guys considering where the Jets pick landed. Thank you so much for those massively exciting wins over the Jags and Dolphins late in the season. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Buck the Trend will be out tomorrow, TOJ Talks, and Sunday Coffee over the weekend. We will be back and talk to you soon.